Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. Good to see the Schaefers back. Hope you're having a wonderful Sabbath. Jesus Christ was asked by the lawyer, what was the great commandment in the law? What was Jesus' answer? And Jesus answered, you are to love your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. But he didn't stop there. He also said, we are to love our neighbor as ourselves. How do we do that? How do we love our neighbors as ourselves? We tend to be self-involved. It's a busy, hectic world. There's a lot going on. How do we truly involve ourselves with other people as much as we can in a helpful way? There are a number of things we can do. There's letter writing. Who writes letters anymore? There's phone calls, there's notes, there's physical things we can do. We can help somebody mow their grass. They can work on somebody's roof, repair their deck, drive them to church, or even be involved in church services. That's all a part of helping your neighbor. But I want to turn to 1 John 3:17. 1 John 3:17. The Apostle John says, but whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? So it's a big part of our calling is to be there for others, to be there with generosity and compassion and love. And that's what generosity is. It's love, giving, and sharing. And a lot of you are doing a great job of that. I want to encourage you to keep that up. There's a lot on this subject. I don't have a whole lot of time, but I want to relate a story that's in a book that my parents had. It's called We Had Everything But Money. It's memoirs from the Great Depression. There's probably 300 stories in this little book. Some of them are very, very touching about how people survived the Depression when there wasn't a whole lot of government aid or financial services or food stamps. This particular story involved a lady named Mildred Ruddick. She was a young lady working at the gas company, and I believe in California. It doesn't say, but it sounds like it might be California. But she was a young lady still living at home. And at the gas company, this was in 1931. Depression had started, but there was a long way to go. And she knew people that were in trouble because they weren't paying their gas bill. And there was one particular family that had not paid their gas bill in 5 months. They hadn't paid a dime on their gas bill. And this story takes place at Christmas, and I hope that doesn't detract from the story. But her supervisor said, after the holidays, we're cutting their gas off. We just can't carry them forever. We can't afford to carry them forever. So she decided, along with her friend, to buy some presents and buy some food and go over and take them to their house. So when they showed up at the house, there was an old car parked outside. The house was halfway decent, but the shades were all drawn. Nothing had been done with the yard for a while. And so they went up to the door, knocked on the door, there was no response. Knocked on the door again, there was still no response. Finally, after the third or fourth knock, one of the curtains parted and a little child looked out and saw that they had presents and they had food. And she excitedly ran to her parents. Somebody's at the door with stuff for us. And so the door was opened, and they were not ready for what they saw. They just weren't ready. They were escorted in, and what they saw was nothing. There was nothing in the house. There were no chairs, no tables. There was no furniture in the living room. They were taken back to the kitchen, and by this time the mom was crying because they had food. They had brought food. And in the kitchen there was a table, but there were orange crates around the table for chairs. Looking around the kitchen, they saw nothing. Once again, the ice box, for you younger people, ice box is what preceded the refrigerator. There was nothing in the ice box. There was no ice. There was no food even seen in the kitchen. And so they left the food. They left the presents. They didn't stick around. Everybody was just thanking him over and over again for the food. And as they were leaving, the father escorted him out, and after he left the house, he broke down. And he said, "What you've done for us is just tremendous. We didn't have any food to eat. We didn't know what we were going to do. There was nothing left to sell. We sold everything we had to try and eat." And so, after he had said that, the young lady and her friend dug in their pockets, gave them all the money they had. It was only $8. But $8 in 1931 was a lot of money. It was not a lot of money, but it was maybe equivalent to $150, $200 today. But it was enough so that they'd be able to buy food and buy a little gas for the car, because he had stated that he had no money to buy gas for the car. He couldn't go out and look for work. And she said, "You know, my parents, they could use a little yard work. If you can come by, I think they'll hire you to do a little yard work." And he said, yes, I'd be so glad to. So he did. He went over there a few days later, did excellent yard work. He had had enough money to buy a little gas for the car. And then some of the neighbors hired him to do other yard work and do other projects, and it really got them back on their feet. So the generosity of this young lady and her friend turned an entire family around. Who knows what would have happened to them? They would have been out on the street, I would think. Who knows what would have happened to them? But with their generosity, their giving spirit, they helped this family dramatically. And brethren, we can too. You know, we still live in a rich country, and we're still all doing quite well. But we know the time's coming when it's going to be difficult for all of us in various ways. And generosity, giving, and sharing is going to be a big part of what we need to be doing for one another. And when you think about it, to have generosity, to be able to give generously to others, others have to be willing to ask for help or let it known that they could use help. And that's one of the areas that I struggle in, because I've always thought of myself as being very self-sufficient and self-supporting and never really needing any help. And it's something I've got to learn how to be able to step up and do it in my future. So, brethren, I just would like you to think about the generosity that you're already doing. Some of you are already opening your homes to others. You're supplying monetary needs for people, food, shelter, clothing. You're doing a great job. And we need to not only do it for ourselves, but we need to do it for our families, for our extended families, and even our neighbors in the world. It's all a part of our calling. And if we go back to 1 John 3 again, I'll close with 1 John 3:18. It states, "My little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth." In deed and in truth. It's very, very important what we do. I mean, it's important the knowledge we have, it's important what we say, but it's vitally important what we do. And in that regard, you think about Jesus Christ and our Heavenly Father God, and the love they have for us and the giving attitude they have for us. Jesus Christ willing to give up his life totally for us. And great Heavenly Father, our God, wanting us to be a part of his family. They're the most giving and generous beings that ever have been, ever will be. So, brethren, I just want to encourage you to be generous, be there for one another.